Hi, Michelle. How are you doing?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Hearing? Yes, good. So I talked to your team for the NCL. I think some more people will join they said they have a Discord, but I also told them to join the Slack. So they should be on there. Okay. All right. So let me share screen. I think more people hopefully will join us soon. So I was having a little bit challenges with Nessus, the dependencies and things, and I was trying to troubleshoot it for so long, but hopefully we'll be able to also talk about the resolution. And if we run into a problem, I'm planning to make the edit to this slightly. I got pretty close, but I think that there's a couple areas I need to fix. So, but anyway, let me get the file up for you.
Oh,
What happened?
You're updating.
Yeah, I will probably modify like maybe a couple of steps, but I wanted to kind of run it over and show you what is needed. Okay, so I think it mainly relies on, there's also, I tried to get their requirements file down and be able to install the dependencies, but I was just running into issues with the dependencies for this particular package. So I think I'm going to fix like a couple of steps here, but in general, these steps were written for Nessus to work with the user interface, and then it should be able to scan fine. But when you get to the Nessus and Python, because of the dependency, I think we might have some issues here if it's not in Python shell. So I will fix some of the areas, okay? So in this lab, do you have questions?
The lab, because it's the CIS27 lab.
Oh, sorry. Let me re-upload it. I might put the wrong file on there. So I did. I probably did that earlier today and I was in a hurry to go to class. So let me put the right file, sorry. Okay, should be available in a few seconds. Okay, so let me double check and make sure that it has everything it needs. Okay. All right, so I worked on this for a couple of days and it's still not in its best shape. So like I said, I have to fix some of the areas, but I troubleshoot a lot of the steps because even on the documentation, it was lacking or there were some steps that were a little different. And then, you know, I plug in some of the things I found. So I think the beginning part of it is mostly working. So on this, we can use our normal Linux release. So you can use your system or your virtual machine. And the second step to this is to be able to download. So let me get, my thing went into pause mode here. So I'll get on Ubuntu. And then let me clear. So all you have to do is to start with Nessus, you would go to your browser inside your Linux system and you can download the application. So you would use this link using Firefox. And if you're using 32-bit, you need to make sure that you download the 32-bit. So I was using the 32-bit yesterday, but on the new just be careful, because if you're using the new Debian, which is the new Ubuntu or Kali, you would find that the 32-bit file will not work with it. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to make sure that it is for Debian 6, and then it's going to put that under your downloads. Okay, so it's going to look like this. Sorry, my thing is a little laggy today. But anyway, so once you download it, this would be the file. Okay, if you're using 64-bit. Now, if you go and look at their site, like what we talked about before, you will find there's different. So if you download this, be careful, because read this section. It's only going to work with Ubuntu up to Ubuntu 17.10. So that's the older OS. Okay, and then if you scroll down, and you will find down here, okay, so make sure that you read, this is for Debian 9 and 10. And so for the later Kali and Debian 9 and 10, you would use this. And then so for the 64-bit, this is for Ubuntu 10.04 or the 9.10 and so on. So they are specific to some of the, so I use this one, So on the 64-bit, you have to make sure that it matches the version of the Linux that you're using. Otherwise, it would not work. So I ended up getting this one instead of the previous one, because I'm using a newer Ubuntu, and the other file doesn't have what it needs. So I ended up downloading this. Okay. So if you're using like the later Kali, we want to make sure that we're using the right package. Okay, so make sure we read the OS information. So a lot of that, like I was going around in circle trying to see which file was actually matching it. It's simply just making sure that we are having the right package for the right OS. I think you had that set up last time when we did the assignment. So once you have that download, you would go into the downloads folder, and then you are going to install. And we have to elevate the privilege on the user account in Linux by doing a -i. So we can unpack the package by doing a dpkg, and then whatever the file name that you have, okay, that will be the file that you plug in here. And you can use wildcard like after Nessus, but I found that it's easier if you actually type out the file name exact. Then we want to move back to a different directory, or the previous directory. And if you have, because I'm using Ubuntu, just like what we talked about in the last lab, you have to enable the policy in the firewall. So the UFW here is the Ubuntu firewall. So in the case of Kali, just got to make sure that you enable the right firewall rules. So we need to add the port. And by default, Nessus is going to use 8834. Okay. So here I'm adding the port number, and I enable the firewall. And so you just simply have to add that rule so it doesn't block it. Then to start it, I know the texts tell you to use the SBIN or the etc, which is not the right path. So if you did it this way, you will have to go into bin, and then you simply issue the command start by using system control. And you can do start status stop for Nessus D. Okay, so with this command is going to allow us to start your Nessus. Okay, let me get back to my terminal here. Zoom in. Now, another way that you can also use the service command to start the actual package after you have downloaded and install it. So what that will do is it's all going to start the service. Okay, so let me minimize this so I can type it. And once you start the service, you simply just need an IP address to be able to connect to it. And we would use the browser to do that, just like what you said last time. You would run into a warning, and then you just click the advanced button, and then there's an accept risk and continue button. And that's gonna override the SSL requirement. Okay. Oh, it says unit service is not found. So let me redo that here. So here we go. Application. I might have uninstalled it last night or something, but testing. _AMD 64. Let's check that real quick. Hold on. I just need to fix my syntax here. 1.2 Debian AMD 64 DB. Oh, this is it. Let me check this. Yep, I'm just missing that in my command. So. Okay, so once you unpack it, then you can start the service. All right, so after that's done, move back one directory, enable firewall rules, start the service, find your IP address, and then open your browser and then plug in your IP address. Now, I found that when you're using your loopback, it doesn't do well with that. So it's better to use localhost or even the IP address, the actual IP address. Then it's going to give you the warning in the browser. So at this point, we want to accept the risk, and then we are going to use the essential version. Then you have to complete the registration. So you have to fill out the form and then submit that, where it's going to be sending you activation code via email. So after you got your activation code, then you would put that into, go back to the browser where it asks for activation code, you type that in, and then you click submit. And that will allow you to be able to access the application. It's going to take about, I don't know, if you're running virtual machine, it tends to be a little slower, but the plugins take about 10 minutes or so to get going and compile. So then after that, you should be able to scan using the interface or the graphical user interface part of the application. Okay. Then I'm going to fix this area. I think that it needs a little bit of dependency for Nest REST, but also maybe because my services is disabled, it was running that. So when it complete the installation here, what you will see is it's going to give you the link on how you would be able to access it now, right? You can use it like this, where I would have the virtual machine name and the port number. Okay, so, but I still need to enable the firewall. So let me do that next. Okay, so it says that, so we're gonna go back. Sudo fw enable. And then we are gonna allow. So it adds the rule already. So it's gonna skip that for me because I had it added earlier. Now we can do the bin system control and start. And then we authenticate. So now if you wanted to check status for this, you simply replace the start with status. And it would tell you if it's actively running, it would say that here. So that works. Okay. Now, if it for some reason it shows up in red and it's saying it's blocked, that means that things are not enabling or the services is not running. So we can do a quit to get back there. So when you view the status, it simply shows something like this. Okay. Then I would go into my Firefox now. And then, oh, let me find my IP address first too. I believe it's just the default 10 dot. So depending on your virtual machine configuration or your system configuration, it might be at home. If you connecting to your home network, it will be 192.168.x, right? So it's safe to just find our IP address. So on my virtual machine, since I'm using VirtualBox, it's giving me the default for the NAT here. So that will be 10.0.2.15. So I'm going to use that or the machine name to be able to connect. So the next part is go HTTPS. And then we would type in our IP. And then we would type in the port. And it should load on the Nessus like this. So since I already register and everything, because it's going to be one machine to, so on the essential, you can only scan 16 other systems. On the professional, there's unlimited in that. So that's the downside, is that when you're using the free application, you can only scan, the max that you can scan is 16. And before they were able to give more, but I think over time, they have updated the application, they limit that. So This process for the plugin, the compilation does take about 10 minutes or so. So it needs to download the plugin and then compile the plugin. And using the plugins, basically the plugins is going to have features where it's going to ping and see other systems vulnerability. Okay, so it's going to use plugins that will be relevant to what you would have inside your network. So this process usually takes longer if you have more systems. Okay, so here at this point, we just need to wait for that after you load, you set up your account and be able to do that. Now, the login that you would have when you set that up is going to be the username and password here. That can be plugged into your script when you write your script. Okay. And so, any question? So while, yes, go ahead.
I'm at that screen where you're at.
Okay, good. So then usually if it's running that, I tend to just move forward and work on the other areas, so you can also do that too. So we can start with maybe install Nessus. Now, going through their documentation, they have a thorough documentation, but there are some areas that was a little slightly different than what I had put it in the lab, because just to troubleshoot, right? Sometimes certain things change. So what we can do is we can write a script that's going to be allowing us to log in. And this comes from their documentation. So what's happening with this script is, I forgot the import statement here. We need to do from Nessus import Nes6res. You need to have that. So I'll re-upload this. Okay. So what you are going to do is you also need to change this part up right here, whatever that your server name would be or your IP address. You need to change that as well. And then your login name, your username, and your password. So when you create the object like this, what you're doing is you're just setting up the scanner class object, and scanner comes from Nessus to use this URL, and then it's going to log you in. Now for the credential, on the Windows credential, if you're running into Windows, then you would do this. Okay. But I think you can simply just create an object, and then you can use the add and the run method like this. So I think step 24 is more valid for the Linux, where you can just build the object or construct the object and then run your scan for the target. Now, if you're using a group of targets, like what you would see in the regular Nessus scan or the basic scan, where it's going to look at every other network that's going to connect all the networks systems, then what you have to do is, this is going to still be your server. Then you just have to create a list of targets where you would use that list as a container and be able to pass that container into the add method and be able to do that. Okay, so I think I'm gonna scrap this portion because the steps here is for Linux. So, but let me highlight this. So I need to go back and fix that. Okay. So on this one, we still need to do an import statement. So from Nessus import Nes6res. And you can also run this directly in shell. So on the shorter script, it's probably better just to do the direct result. So we want to make sure we plug in our username and password and then our target address. If you want to scan another system within the network, and then you would use the run method. And I think the textbook also shows something similar to this, right? And we want to make sure that we change our server information as well. Okay, so if your server name is whatever your system name would be, then you would change that there. Okay, so let me check on my compilation here. Yeah, this is going to take a while. So Nessus is one of those applications that it does, depending on the size of your network, and the larger it is, the harder it's going to be. So, and also the type of plugins or the type of resources that you're using on your network, it does take a while. Okay. So on the interface end, it does take a little bit. And then even on when you're scanning it with the script, you got to give it time. It's vulnerability scanning is not something that we can immediately do and then get the result right away. You know, you have to give it time to finish. Any question? Okay, so let me come back here. And then let me see if I can run the Python instead of writing the script. So I'm going to do from Nessus import Nessus rest. And then we are going to create an object. Scan is. Let me put this so we don't flip screen so much on the recording. Nessus rest is scanner object. URL is, and on mine it is https 10.0.2.15 with the port 8834. And we want, and then your login name. I think I have mine as Nessus admin. And the password is, oh, I have to put this in quotation mark, otherwise it's going to throw an error. So if you run a script, you just simply just write it and then run it. Or you can run it directly in shell. Okay. And then the target you can just pick. I think it can probably scan itself, but that will be also some time. I use the same password as the, that's okay if they have my virtual machine stuff, so not a big deal. And we want to do insecure true for the SSL certificate, self-signing certificate is true. Sure, I have all the separator. Okay. Oh, what is it saying? Okay, so it's unavailable 503. It's not ready. So it did take that, but because I'm running on the graphical user interface, it did not like when I started it again. Okay, so that should parse fine with the username and password. And and then if you have it available and not being used. And then after that, I just need to run 2 methods. So I can just set up the target and then I would run. So that will accept that. And then on this one, after we test it with the very basic scan to 1 target, we can also use it this way. And so this is what the textbook has. So what will happen is you are using argparse here as a module or the library, and then you can run it with as a local host, or if you plug in your server or your machine name, it should be able to do that. Now, the difference between what we just did with the object in the shell or run that script is that on this one, we're using argparse to really bring in your login information. So it's still going to have the argument for the login and the password. And then you are going to take that and plug that into the parameter, which you still have to create that object. So ultimately, right, this section is only to be able to parse your username and password. And then it's going to take that and put it into the scan object. And then you should be able to print out the scan. Okay. So I think in general, if you have the application installed, you can include the library, the module, and then just use the superclass from that module, which is Nessus. You should be able to accomplish the same thing in Python as you would in the interface. Okay. Now you can test the other scripts that's provided in the book or the documentation. I think when I looked at the documentation, they did write a client script that's slightly different than what you see from your textbook. So if you refer to Nessus GitHub, right, for the details, they have linked to their documentation. So you can look at that as well. So I use that as a base to kind of, troubleshoot some of the area in Nessus. And I completely forgot that I disabled Nessus last night when I tested this. So this morning when I tried to rerun some of the script, of course, I forgot about enabling the services again. So as long as you start the service, then it should be all right. Okay. Now, we also want to use JSON because that's probably a better approach in how we would be able to bring some of the scan information forward. So, the lack of what you would see on this one and the prior one here is that you can import in JSON and then be able to output the details a little bit better as it's using JSON. Right. So Nessus has a database that's equipped. So whenever it's pulling these scans, it's actually putting it into a storage where it would treat everything, like a system information that would have correlation to the record. So it's relational. And because of that, that's why the application is using JSON to really pull a lot of the details from the application. So you often see that web application or web scanner, like this one or OpenVAS, that would use that type of technology in the back. Okay. So in the second script, this is an example from our text. I did have another example, so I will make that as an option. Let me show you what that looks like. It's actually Nmap with Nessus together. We'll scan. So I started writing this one, and this one is using Nmap and also Nessus. And I intended it for it to be scanning like a target setup system, which is, itself. So I implemented some of the Nmap options in or features inside the script. And then it's going to store the information in the dictionary for the Nessus, because you often see that we would run the port scanner to detect, like, certain system that would have weakness, and then we would run another scanner. So you can definitely build out a script that would use multiple scanner. One would work with the other. So if I just didn't have time to get all of this corrected, but it was like about 85-90% done. So I will add that to the document tonight or tomorrow morning so that you would have it. So in the case if you want to refer to it. And I think I have a typo here as well, a syntax error. Okay, so on this one, we simply set up some of the option for it to scan UDP and TCP. And then it would put that into the dictionary for Nessus. So it will iterate through that for each of the IP. And then it's going to handle the exception. So after it scans the port, the TCP and the UDP port, what it would do is it's going to print out the information for those systems that would be to Nmap and also Nessus. So I thought that that will be cool to do, but I have some areas that I have to troubleshoot. So, yeah, and it's not too long of a script. Okay. And then for the second script that we have in our lab, okay, it's just plugging in your username and password and then the details in that. Okay, so the object, and then it's going to use the object to scan. So, and then it's going to iterate through the detail scan, and it's going to print out the information for each of the system by name. And that's what you normally see when we finish this part. Okay, so my virtual machine is crawling on that. And until this frees up, right, a lot of time if you run other script while it's doing this, because the application is being utilized, it's going to come back that the server is unavailable and you're going to get a 503 or some kind of error. Okay, so let me come back to here. Any question? So I think for this particular lab, because the application is so slow, we probably can't get all of these run concurrently. So that these things can probably be improved. So if you do write a script using Nessus, consider doing concurrent or parallel programming. I think that it can definitely utilize some of the, either you're using threading or if you're using multiprocessor, it would definitely improve on that area for the plugins, because as it would go through, even if there's quite a bit of dependencies that we rely on for the plugins for the application itself, but a lot of the things can probably be managed or handled via parallel programming. Okay, so as you run through these scripts, just give me a screenshot and then explain the functionality of the script, which is easy. Any question? Just you and I today. I think the rest of them are busy today, so they're not here. Okay. Then on OpenVAS, there are quite a few steps that are required in OpenVAS. And I think the text, when they tell you to just use sudo app install OpenVAS, if you try that, you're going to get an error because it's not going to be able to pull the package. Okay, so you are going to get it from a repository. Okay, and then you're going to push the update, because VAS, oh, I see. Okay, That's probably why they're not in here. Because the OpenVAS uses SQLite, so you are going to have to install SQLite, okay? And then you are going, after that, then you can install the OpenVAS. So these are the dependency for the application. So we have to make sure that SQLite is installed. And then you simply just use the service command to start the manager or restart the manager. So the manager allows you to manage the vulnerability or identify the vulnerability or both. So you would start with identifying the vulnerability and then use the manager console, or in our case, we can also put in a script to do that. So after, this is going to be your IP. So after you have restart the management console, we would then need to use the web browser, right? Similar to what you've seen with Nessus, you need to go to your server machine. And in my case, that will be 10.0.2.15 or whatever your IP is, and this port. Now, if it comes back that it's not responding, you need to make sure, just like what you've done in the other one, you got to make sure that you add it to the firewall rule, because otherwise it will not come through. So here we're using the port 4000. Okay. And then you are going to, once it's connect, just like Nessus, you are going to confirm the security exceptions, you accept it, and then you create the login account. Okay, and in the example here, we're just using admin, but it will be just whatever your choice would be. So I'll highlight that. Okay. And then once you have that set up, you would be able to have the VAS running. And you can start a new task and then you can set that up. Now, on the scripting side, OpenVAS uses Python GVM. Okay. So let me go to their repository. I want to point out something for you. So for Greenbone Vulnerability Management, that's what it stands for. Okay. They state here that it works with 3, right? And you just have to make sure that you install the module. So if you click here, it talks about how you need to use. So if you are using an internal library, such as something that's specific to your network, right? It says if the application on the library uses Python GVM internally developed, then you have to implement the poetry, right? And so the step here talks about how you can install GVM, and we can use pip3 for that, and then we would need to bring in poetry. But since we don't develop anything internally, then you can just simply install it on your virtual environment or on your system and be able to utilize the resource. And if you need to do the git clone, that's where their git clone will be. Okay. So you can either use this here or you can use the link that was provided in the lab. This. Any question? Okay. So for the second part, our script is not too challenging. And this is also from the textbook, because I was testing out some of the other script, and this seems to be better. Okay. So if you're using admin, that will be exact matching here. So make sure that we have the right account information. Otherwise, we're going to run into error. So you are going to import in the module. And then since this is scanning for vulnerability, it's going to rely on network protocols. And it's going to go through and it's going to check for anything that would be related to that system, connections, transform, and so on. Now, it's using the TLS connection superclass. So because just like what you see in Nessus, this is a remote scanner, so it uses TLS for the authentication purposes. So therefore, you need to create a connection object that would allow you to connect to that server, which is your local host. So whatever your server name would be, that's going to go here. Okay. And then the second object that we're going to use transform. And this is going to allow us to run some of the commands that comes equipped in GVN. So after that, we are going to authenticate or connect and authenticate. Now because it is a management console that you're going to have, you can set up your users or access the users, and then also access the tasks. So here we create users, tasks, targets, scanners, config. And so OpenVAS is a little bit different than Nessus in that there are additional resources that you can manage through the console. So therefore the script is slightly different there. And then in the second part, what we're going to do is it's going to find the details for each of the areas for each of the object that we create, like the users, the task, the target. So we want to print out that information. And NVT are simply very similar to what you've seen as plugins on Nessus. It's going to pull the NVT's information, and that's where you're going to be able to find more details on CVEs. So that means that any common vulnerability that's coming through related to these objects, which entails plugins, we want to see what that would be. And also on OpenVAS, you should be able to, it has a button where you would click and it's going to take you to the details of that CVE. Okay. So you would find like the vulnerabilities and what those vulnerabilities are. So it gives you the ID for the vulnerabilities. And then we would just use Mitre or, online resources to really find how we can close that gap after we got the result from this. And so since it's and then if it can't connect to the server, we want to handle the exception there. So we would just print out the error that it comes across. So for the second part, as you complete that, because I can't really proceed, let me see if I can move into Nessus now. And you're going to see that when you're scanning, right, especially on virtual machine, it gets a little boggy. Keep in mind, I'm running on a single core with limited RAM on my virtual machine. And so if you do pen testing this way, a lot of the times you would see, for most of us, we would use multiple systems and multiple powerful systems in order to run multiple scans on different virtual machines. So that way we, for that single target. So the difference in that compared to what you have here is that you're using, so if you can connect to the network, you can bridge your connection and be able to scan all your neighbor systems, okay? Or what you can do is if you're using NAT, it's going to put you on a separate private network, and then it's going to translate the address to the network that you're connecting to. So I normally would set my system on bridge. So at home, if you want to scan other system on your network, okay, once you set up your Nessus, or before you set up your Nessus, you need to set your network settings to bridge. I did this last night and I was able to scan some of the system on my wireless network at home. So once you bridge this at home, you are going to have the, the 192.168. Whatever the IP address would be. Okay. I saw somebody popped in and then that person signed up. So before you start the server or anything, you can also set that up, and then that way you would have a regular IP that you would use. Okay. And so it's barely halfway through, as you can see there. So let me get out of here and then let me do a pip free. Let me set up the OpenVAS while we wait for this. Do you have any question? See if I can run the repository. So, or I have to do the clone on this. Add repository. AMR. I need a quotation mark there. I think this is a problem. Hold on 1 second. Let me troubleshoot that real quick. This is syntax error there. Okay. So it's just missing. Let me put in my password real quick. What? We can probably do a get phone. What is? Hold on 1 second. Let me get the link and then I can just clone. I can just clone the repo. Git clone. HTTPS. GitHub.com. Open VAS scanner. Okay, so let me share screen. So for this part, I think we can probably change this. So before, let's do this. And then we can probably, after it does that, then we can do sudo app get install open VAS. Let me look at their repo real quick. Okay. Yeah, it's running C library. Utilities. You see all these .h files. So let's see. That means that we have to build it too. So that means just the Docker information module can be configured, built, and installed using the cmake command and make install. Okay, let me test that real quick. Yeah, so I cloned it, and then once you clone it, you probably have to build it. Let me push update real quick. Okay, let's see. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll fix some of these steps. I think we're going to run into issues, but we probably have to update, and then we can install. This probably needs to go, and we can probably do open VAS 9. Or the newer edition. Okay. So I'll add it. I'll modify some of this and then I'll put that up on Canvas again. So that way you won't run into issues. Let's check on the Nessus. Okay, it's about 50% done now. These things are slow and any question? Okay, So let me make sure that I just want to see if I can get my, so install SQLite, then you can install OpenVAS, and then we would start the manager, and hopefully that will take care of the problem. Then after that, you can, what did I put down? Yeah, I did put down that we need to install Python GVM, and then we would write the script. So as long as we can get the application inside the system, we would be able to write the script to run that application. So, and this one has database, so we want to make sure that we have the service as well. Okay, so let me see if I can run the, let me test these. Oh, okay. Yes. 2, 8, 3. Okay. Did that. It's going. Okay, so now after SQLite, let's see if we can get the OpenVAS. Into our system. Okay. When will you post the update? Is to do Sunday night. I'll have it up tonight, like when I post the video. Okay. So if it takes longer, then I'll just extend the due date, but it's a small fix, so I should be able to get that up tonight. It's just the process in this, you do have to wait a little bit for all of these things to run. So I'll get this updated document in, and then if you want to work on it tomorrow or something, you can. And then I'll add the video tonight as well. Okay, so while you're here, I just wanted to also show you if we can probably troubleshoot. Install, yes. OpenVAS 9. It says I can't find that, so because we're not using the other. Which versions are they? I think they relabeled this as the scanner. So let me see. Yeah, so and this. Okay. So I think the first part is good now, except for this. So we are gonna, you don't have to do this number, the old number 23, but we can do this script. We can go all the way down to the end of A. The B part is, we just need to fix these two. and it should be all right. Because once it's in, it should be the account and everything. Oh, I see it now. It's fixed. So let me share with you. You just need to install instead of the 9 here, just OpenVAS. Like that. And that should work. So it'll look like this. So I just simply just install that. I think they removed the number. Now, if you're running low on storage on your system, because a lot of these are going to bring in the packages. So yeah, so you simply just do like this, and it should bring it in. Okay. And then now it's installing the manager. So after that, we can just start the manager. And then it should work after that. Now, if you want to uninstall these down the line, you can simply do, stop services, or you can remove. So you can do sudo remove and then the application itself, and it will take it away. And then when you use it, you have to install it again and enable all the dependencies on it. And this takes a little bit because I think Greenbone has a lot of like the interface component with the manager. So the application itself requires a lot of packages and modules. So it's going to take a little bit to get everything in. Now, this is only for the application, so you still have to install the GVM, which is, the module that we can use to write the script for Python GVM. Any question? So if I can get it up tonight, then we can maintain it for Sunday. But if I can't get it up tonight, if it's going to tomorrow, then I'll extend it until next week, and so you can have time to play with it. Just the scan does take a bit. So let me, while it's running this, I'm gonna go and check my browser. Yeah, so it's about 65% done on that. And sometimes even when you wait like this, because I'm on the virtual machine network, right, it will come back just my system. And so, at home, if you do scan this, so it should come back with all the devices that are connected, or the 16 devices that are connected, because we're using Essentials. Okay, so let's see. A little slow. Any question? All right, let's see how far we are here. It's still going. So after we have it installed, then we can start it, and then we would use the login information after we use the interface. So you wanted to test it on the interface, and then you can test it with the script. Okay. And so if I run this class again next year, we're still going to have to fix some of the stuff because these things constantly change. So if you do use these tools down the line, you just want to make sure that, you know, your packages are update. And then in the case that if they do modify the application itself, right, it's probably better to update for the application and then check your script against what that update would be. So go to their GitHub and look at, you know, some of the track. So GitHub is used to track version and what's modified in that version. So you can go to their site also and read more of the details before you rerun that same script, because and that's what's happening in this industry, because when we're using open source tools, sometimes, you know, the tools stay consistent over a long period of time. However, if, you know, if they don't modify too much of the development and on that tool, but if things are modified, then we would have to, you know, be fluid in how we would fix our script to really fit some of the things that would be added features and such. All right. So how far did you get, Michelle? Did you have your system scanned? And then were you able to install for the second part?
No, I'm still waiting for the Nessus part.
Yes. So that will be at least, I want to say it's going to go for hours. Okay. So the downside of this is I did try to scan it like overnight the other day, and then my computer went to sleep when that happens. And then, you know, it puts the virtual machine on pause. So when I pick it back up, it, you know, it's still going to be, so yeah, it's going to be a little bit of time. And you can also pause it and end it. However, you won't see the result if you do that. And that's the nature of these vulnerability scanner. For as long as I remember, even the old version of Nessus, it has not been fast, because it still have to go discover the system and then go through and you know, run all those plugins against those systems. So, you know, it does take a bit. And I'm just trying to download these now so you can see that we can install the OpenVAS. And then the next step is if I'm able to run the manager, then we're all good. Okay, we just need to run the script. So the big part of it is to get these applications into the system and then get the module that work with the API in the system, and how the script would line up with those modules. And I think it's across with all the tools that would be available for cybersecurity in general. So the resources, even through documentation, sometimes, you know, you have to fidget it, you have to modify it a little bit in order to make it work, as they don't always update the documentation frequently. So but for the majority of the community, you would see that they do maintain their repository and their documentation. It's just, you know, if it's a few months ago or even years ago, there will be changes that you will have to make. So now, if you run this on Windows, you would see that like even Nessus on Windows, right? It's somewhat user friendly. And then let's go for the mini. Yeah, so I think when we did the install, let me read a little bit more on. So here's the instructions. So since we're using Linux, we don't have to bring in GCC, but if you're using Windows, right, you would have to have the C compiler, because this particular module for OpenVAS it uses C, and on Windows OS for native, we don't have the C compiler. So just like similar to what you've seen in advanced Python, you have to go through compiling it like this, right? And then you would use the CMake command. So that's why they put that there. Okay. And then you also have to set up configuration file and so on. So I think on the Linux side, it's a little bit simpler. Let's see. Yeah, it's still going to install. I know this is a big package, so. Question. I think the Greenbone, they also have others. So if you check out while you wait for this, right, you would see that they have, and they have jobs opportunity. If you want to work as the developer. So you have the manager, the tools. Here's the OpenVAS, and then the module, but it has two. There's the OSPD and then also the scanner. So if you use OpenVAS, it would have all of the sub elements. Okay. And then I think you've seen their documentation. So here it goes into the detail of what those are and how to use them. So security assistant, the manager. So we're going to use this module or the GVM module. I saw that there are also scripts that you can use, or so here they show you how to use the command, but there are also scripts that you can use to create sign key. I think in some of the example, either from them or other entity, you would see that you can actually create signing key with Python and then run that. So that way it would set up the trust for the management capability of the actual server. So here it walks you through on how to use it in Linux, on how, what kind of, it has a bunch of dependencies. So on the Python side, you can bring in some of the library because it's using a GPG, right? And that's for encryption. And so you have to, and then after that, you have to build it. Okay, so this section is probably good to kind of look over because in some case you will, in order to access it with other application or API, you have to have a signing key. So for example, if I need to implement it for like a web application scanning and be able to connect directly to that, I have to make sure that my sign key is available or ready. Okay. So these steps are pretty lengthy, and then you can also make users and groups. Okay, so individual users. So in the script, it actually shows you. So for us, we only have the admin, so you would have one to start. But down the line, you can also have user accounts. Okay, so I see that it has that. Okay, let's check. Okay, it's still gonna go. So you can, it's probably safe to say that you can still run the installation of OpenVAS while you are, so these are the steps. Okay, and I'll post that. So we can get the scanner into the system. And then after that, we'll just open the manager or restart it. Okay. And then I'll retest the scripts and make sure that we don't run into any kind of bug problem. Okay, so I'll get these up tonight, maybe by, I want to say 10 or 11. So I'll work on it when I get home after this. And then if I can get it up tonight, then we'll just set it up. But for Sunday submission, but if it's taking a little longer, then I'll just postpone it until next Wednesday is when you're gonna be due. Okay. Let's see. Where is my browser? Oh yeah, mine is still going because I guess if you're running on a regular computer, it's a lot faster because if you have multi-core. Okay, so you can take a screenshot for that portion and then you can run the Nest rest stuff after that and see if that works. Okay. I'm even afraid to pause it right now or but I'm gonna have to because I don't think that it will be able to, oh, maybe it will scan if I just leave it open. Yeah, let me check on my terminal. But for sure, I think when you take classes like this, looking at security scripts, using Linux system, it's definitely going to beef up your troubleshooting skills in some of these codes and, fixing some of the issues that you would see in some open source application and so on. So, and it's always good to have that kind of knowledge because sometimes you have to do it on the fly where you don't have much time, but you still have to scan. So, and then I know that they have asked me about side note, right? About, if you are still looking for work, and I did tell them that you are. So, if you have an updated resume, you can send it to me and I will have Sarah work on it some more. But she did ask me about which students are ready, and I think that you're ready for the apprenticeship. And then I did post a job, but it's all the way in Diamond Bar. I don't know if you're interested in it, but it does pay $30 an hour, and it's really easy, just replacing equipment. It will require some lifting, but okay. They said as soon as possible. They are looking for like a 3 to 6 months contract. So let me show you. It's in Diamond Bar. So Diamond Bar is a nice area. I got this information from, it's right here. So they said hardware installation, some field work, and it's through South Coast. So you can take a look at that. It's $30 an hour. It's basically full time for the contracted months. And I don't know if they have additional things following that. I think it's, based on how you contract, and if you do well, you might have another contract through them. So if you're interested, there's the contact information on that. You can send that person a message or email, but make sure that you include your resume and stuff like that in case they need to take a look at it. But for now, they said that they need 2 people. They had reached out to one of the faculty at Mount SAC, but I think they just don't have the resources, so they have forwarded to me. And so I've been telling my students, so if you want to do that, you can pursue that as well. But definitely send me your resume and I will go ahead and forward it to the team. Make sure Rosalind is going to work on that next week when she comes back to help you get started. I think, they start talking about county and other locations, so we can take a look at who's actually interviewing and select, whether they are appropriate for you. Okay. Oh, it is finished. Let me test out one more thing. So sudo service. CIS manager. Start. Okay, it's good. So you can definitely do this. After it's installed, and then we just need to put in our, I have my browser going for the other one. So, and then use your browser and log in. Okay, so I'll test the rest of this and get it up and running for you. And it should be available tonight. Other questions? Okay, good luck in the NCL, and then let me know if you have any questions or concern. I know I told some of your teammates, so hopefully they'll be able to help or contribute somehow. Okay, let me stop recording.